Sounds good.
Okay.
So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for showing up on this Zoom to hear from Professor Probett. I remember my freshman year, my Honor 113 class was her leadership class, and it was literally, to this day, one of the most memorable classes that I've ever taken at State. So she's pretty awesome, and so she's done so much that she'll obviously tell you all about. But if you guys are curious on how to use your personal brand to enhance your leadership skills, and especially during the age of pandemic, we're going to hear from Christine. So whenever you want to begin.
Perfect. Well, hello, everyone. It's a small group, so I'm not going to mute you, unlike our class, Leslie, where it's mayhem. I have to mute the whole thing. So I'll leave it open, but I'd like to ask if you would please wait till the end for questions, because I may cover your questions in the course of what I'm sharing. So I'm going to get my PowerPoint up and running here. And hopefully it's working okay. Are you guys seeing that all right?
Yep.
Yes, but it's not zoomed in yet.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, do you see the first sheet?
I personally still see it. Yeah, I see the first sheet, but it's not in the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I don't think it's in presentation mode.
In the presentation, there you go, presentation mode.
I've just put it in presentation mode. Are you seeing it now?
Oh, I think you might have to like switch like what part of the screen you're sharing.
That you're sharing.
Yeah, because I think for Zoom, that's like a different screen, a different option that you have to choose when you put it in presentation mode.
Oh, okay, well, let's see this. Let me try this one. Are you seeing this?
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, let me advance one.
Oh.
Try. Did it advance?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, so thank you for the tip there, because I just opened it in presentation mode, and apparently Zoom has another method. So anyways, well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here, and it's good to know a couple of you already in the class or in this meeting. So this is a session for personal branding for success. And I know Morgan mentioned a little bit about me being a faculty fellow for the Honors College, but I'm actually a 3-time Aztec alum. I graduated with a degree in history, a degree in aerospace engineering, then I came back for my MBA. So I'm definitely an Aztec for life. My professional career was in the aerospace industry, and I retired as the president of one of our divisions of the Goodrich Corporation. And so after I retired, I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be cool to go back to San Diego State, where, you know, they prepared me very well for a great career, and if they'll let me, teach. And so they did let me teach, and I've been teaching for the Fowler College for, 13 years or something. I was an assistant dean for a couple of years, 5 years or so ago, and the faculty fellow with the Weber's Honors College when that started. So I love being on campus, and I kind of wish we were more on campus right now, but we'll get through these tough times. But anyways, just verify you got this, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so, when you start thinking of leadership and how you, move through the world, you should think of it like a toolbox. And a toolbox is a container where you keep and carry tools. And so as you expand your leadership skills and your professional skills, you really want to think of it like a figurative toolbox to add things as you learn lessons and as you get new methods and techniques. So some of the things you might consider to really polish up for your toolbox are your presentation, as well as writing skills, your ability to be a problem solver, how to manage time, which, as Morgan knows, that was a key emphasis in our Honors 113 class, because if you have good time management, you'll be able to do 10 times more than if you don't. Emotional intelligence is a key aspect, and that's something you evolve with over time and experience. And there's a lot of things that you might consider adding to your toolbox. But as you progress through your leadership journey, you should also try to collect as many new tools as you can. And so one of the essential tools that I think is good at all points in your career is that of personal branding. So, you know, the basic question, what is a personal brand? And there's lots of definitions and lots of answers, but I like this one by Jeff Bezos, who's the founder of Amazon. And they just announced last week that he's the richest guy in the world. So he knows his stuff. But his perspective is that personal brand is what people say about you when you leave the room. And so I've been working on this kind of general concept of how to polish and present your personal brand in the best light possible. And I think it boils down to really 3 pretty easy steps. Now it's going to take some work to really polish them up, but the steps are quite easy. The first is learning how to make a great first impression. The second is doing things to set yourself apart. And one example of setting yourselves apart that you're already doing is that you're part of the Weber Honors College. And that's huge compared to, you know, how many? There's several hundred of you versus 35,000 students. So that's a key way to set yourself apart. And I'll give some more pointers when we get there. The third thing is to know your audience and be able to kind of adjust your presentation and your personal style to fit the audience as things vary. So we'll get into that a little bit. So on the topic of first impressions, you know, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. You know, that first impression is it for each person that you encounter. So you want to make sure you make your best first impression possible. And one of the things about personal impressions is if you do a better job, you can build trust with your first impression. So here's a picture of the same man, and let's look at different first impressions you might get based on this man by what he's putting out there. And if you look at the picture on the right, he looks like he might be a doctor or somebody who's obviously working in the medical profession. And you know, if you were going into the ER, you would probably really trust this guy because he's got the stethoscope, he's got the coat, he looks like he knows something about medicine. Conversely, if you look at the same guy but dressed differently on the right with the cutoff shirt and the tats and jeans and everything, if you saw him in the ER coming after you to help you out, you might think, oh, I'm not sure about this. But if you were going to a restaurant or a bar where creativity, or even an art gallery where creativity is really valued, you might say, yeah, that's an appropriate first impression. So you really want to kind of, like I said already, know your audience and know who you're going to be seeing and working with. Another aspect of this, as we just saw, is that of dressing appropriately. And, you know, student wear is students. It's shorts, it's t-shirts, it's flip-flops. It's totally perfect for students because your job isn't to, you know, your job is to learn and your job is to be comfortable so you can focus on listening and learning. So that's perfectly appropriate for student. If you had an interview or you a networking event, would that be appropriate? No, it's a little too casual. However, if you look at this next set of pictures of business casual is no longer shorts. It's either long slacks or pants or a skirt, a button-down shirt, maybe a polo, sandals, flip-flops no longer. You know, you want some shoes that are closed-toe. And if you had an interview or a networking session, would this be appropriate? And the answer is absolutely yes. Yeah. Business formal now is the full thing. You're wearing a suit. Guys might have, you know, a full tie. Women could have a skirt or slacks. Just a side note that in both cases you want to be conservative, but for women, just be very careful not to be, you know, having too low a cut of top to be appropriate from that standpoint. If you're having an interview or a networking situation, is this appropriate? Absolutely. There's a fourth kind of dress code, which we would call formal. And that's, you know, a tuxedo or a long dress. Would that be appropriate for an interview or networking situation? Generally not. If you are going to the Academy Awards, then that would be appropriate. But as a student and as a young business person, a young professional, the ones you really want to focus on is that of business casual and business formal. And as you're getting closer to the end of your college education, you might want to invest in a nice suit and, you know, just make it decent and try not to gain or lose weight so you can wear it for several years and amortize the cost of that, because I do know it's expensive, but it will help you. Another thing to consider is in these times of COVID, you want to make sure that when you're having these virtual meetings or you have a virtual presentation for some of your classes, that there's an appropriate attire there too. So you, again, you would still want to focus on the business casual or the business formal, at least from the waist up, right? I know that, you know, a lot of people work from home in their sweats or their PJs from the waist down, and that's perfectly fine unless you get up and walk away and people see it. Some other things though is just to make sure you prepare your workplace. Make sure there's not backlighting. You're not sitting in front of a window so it's hard to see your face. You also want to be mindful of the rest of your surroundings. Try to shut off any music or TV. If you're in your bedroom, if there's inappropriate posters, be careful. And you want to ask your housemates and roommates to keep it quiet, especially if it's important. If it's a job interview, for example, for an internship, you want to make sure that you have some quiet space there. Okay, another related topic is that of etiquette. And etiquette is defined as rules that indicate the proper and polite way to behave. And, you know, this is a famous quote from Will Rogers, who's was around over 100 years ago, but he says, common sense ain't so common. So we think etiquette is well known and understood, but a lot of people just don't. So it takes a little bit of consciousness and awareness of what the rules of etiquette are and being mindful of following them. So the first rule of etiquette is that of the golden rule. And of course, you've heard this, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the golden rule is actually a very common theme in countries, in religions, in cultures around the world. It's really pretty much universally accepted as kind of the basic thing that people should be doing for each other. There's also some basic etiquette guidelines that, again, common sense isn't as common as you think. You know, when you're walking around, especially on campus, back when, you know, there's 50,000 people cruising in between classes, try not to text as you're doing that, because when you're texting, you're going slower and there's people trying to get around you and whatnot. So just be mindful of that. Sit on a bench, sit on the grass, whatever. Be mindful of your cell phone in public areas, especially in at a dinner table or, you know, movies, or when you are using the bathroom. I don't even get that, but people do, I know. So just be aware of your surroundings, and not everybody's as comfortable or interested in having cell phones interrupt what would be a normal just social situation. This should go without saying, but it doesn't. Close your mouth, cover your mouth when you sneeze or cough. Now that we're wearing masks all the time, I think that that's going to help it. But you know, it's just a basic, you know, common courtesy. You want to, if you're getting on an elevator, let everybody get off first. It's infuriating to me when I'm trying to get off an elevator and there's, you know, 8 people trying to get on who don't quite get it, that's kind of the protocol. If you're getting off an airplane, you know, the first rows get off, then the second, and then the third. So, you know, many times there's somebody in the back row who's like running down the center of the aisle to get off before everybody. And then it clogs up everybody and it's just a mess. So just wait your turn. And finally, you know, say please and thank you, be respectful of others. So another basic etiquette element is that of being on time. And there's lots of excuses, and, you know, you can see there's a whole bunch coming up. I've heard them all. I haven't used them all, but I certainly have heard them all. But in a nutshell, if you're late, you're being rude. You're being rude to your host or hostess. You're being rude to your potential employer if it's for a job interview. So just be mindful. And the reason people tend to be late is they underestimate the time it takes them to do stuff, to get from, you know, their house to the appointment, or, you know, to get through traffic, or they just underestimate things. So plan ahead, pad your time, get there a little early. And if you are there early, you know, get a coffee or just relax with a glass of water or something, and then you can calm yourself down and be better prepared for whatever your situation. But you definitely don't, you know, being late it could be a cause for you not getting a job. I've had some late interviews that people came late to an interview I was conducting, and it left a pretty bad taste in my mouth. Okay, so networking is probably one of the things you really want to be using these personal branding skills in as you're looking for internships, as you're looking for your first job, or any, you know, grad school or whatever. You want to make sure that you're displaying good etiquette. And so if you're going to a networking event, which, you know, they're all virtual now, so things are a lot different, but if you're going to a networking event, and you have a name tag, the rule of thumb that I think makes most sense is that you put your name tag on, if you have a jacket on your right lapel, kind of here by your, shoulder. And the purpose of doing that is when you extend your hand to shake it, somebody can sight up your arm and look at your name tag, as opposed to if it's clipped on your bottom or if it's clipped on the left or the right. You don't want people looking around your body to see where your name tag is. So make it easy. This is kind of the common place people are going to be looking. So make sure when you're at these events, you have your tag in the right lapel, introduce yourself and the rest of your party, and try to really focus and remember names. I know that it's hard to remember names, but if you're really paying attention and maybe recite it a couple times over in your mind, you'll be able to remember it well. And you got to be kind of good at doing small talk. If you're going for, from a group of people to another group of people, or from one person to another person, you're changing it up very quick. So be comfortable in knowing, doing the pleasantries and talking about relevant, short topics. And then I like this, try to listen more than talking. And this quote of 2 ears and 1 mouth should help you remember that, you've got, you should be focusing twice as much of your time listening than talking. And, you obviously, if you're asked a question, you respond to it, but, don't go on and on and on. Try to let them, express something about themselves and carry on the conversation. Okay, and you need to know when to shake hands and how to shake hands. And everybody knows you stick your arm out and you move your hand, but I've had some really, really poor handshakes. I've had handshakes where I felt like my bones were being crushed. I've had handshakes where it's kind of weak and kind of, just not very affirmative. So here's a quick primer on how to shake hands, just to be sure. You want to be the first to extend your hand, but you don't want to be walking around an event with your hand just ready to find another hand to contact, right? So, extend it. You want to make sure that your hand is straight, not upside down or facing up. You want to take the other person's hand in a firm, but not a hard, rock hard clasp, or not too gentle or too weak. And you want to keep your hand perpendicular to the ground and shake firmly once, or at the most twice. And the reason I say this, I really emphasize this as a woman, is that I personally think that most women I've shaken hands with don't shake hands well. And I think it's a skill that people should try to practice and learn to do well and calibrate yourself. So if you're at home or with your roommates or whatever, just check that you've got the right handshake elements, that you're making the eye contact, you're still talking. And whatever you do after you shake hands, don't wipe your hand off on your leg or your skirt or something. It just seems like you're disgusted, right? So don't do that. So needless to say, will COVID-19 end the handshake? Well, I think it might. I really think it might. I think, fist bumps were kind of early on acceptable, but I think we're seeing now more, elbow bumps or foot bumps, or maybe just even air hugs. It's a different time right now. And so, I think that after COVID, we might just continue to do, high fives and air hugs, and we'll see, but just be flexible and know that, that it's very uncomfortable to many people. So don't, just be mindful of that. Okay, so now moving on to the second step is things you can do to set yourself apart. And like I've already said, you're doing many things already just by being part of the Weber Honors College and getting involved in events like this, coming and learning about new and different things. So that's awesome. So academically, you want to select a major that's something that's in demand and that, hopefully there's some employment opportunities on the other end. A complementary minor, obviously the Weber's interdisciplinary minor helps that for sure. Excellent GPAs, scholarships, capstone projects. I'm not worried about people in the Honors College nailing this element. I think you have truly set yourself apart by being accepted and maintaining your participation in the Honors College. Some other things though is involvement, and this group that you're involved with now certainly qualifies. Other things on campus, associated students, different student organizations, student conferences. They're still going on. They're all becoming virtual, but your involvement is really going to help you there. Case competitions, ambassadors, mentoring other students, or being a mentor student to professional mentorship. Getting involved in many of those things are super beneficial. Volunteering can take a number of forms, either tutoring other students or during doing things like service learning or community service, whether it's associated with San Diego State or your fraternity or sorority, or it's just something you're doing outside. Those are really valuable, and they set you apart. You know, as I go through, I've looked at gazillions of resumes, and as I go through resumes, I look for more than just the academic stuff. I look for the well-roundedness of a person, and the better you're doing things on multiple fronts, the better you're going to set yourself apart. Of course, internships, ideally you want them related or complementary to your major. Sometimes an internship teaches you that you don't want to go down a certain path. You think this is an area that you've got an interest in, and you get this internship and go, wow, that was not what I thought. And it might allow you to move into a different direction. And that's a good thing. I think that's a great thing. There's nothing worse than graduating and getting your first job and finding out that, oh my gosh, this sucks. This is not what I thought. So, and these internships could be paid and unpaid. I know it's hard to accept something that's unpaid because, you know, you're starving students, but sometimes that's the way to get some valuable experience that will, over time, maybe pay back in dividends by taking advantage of that experience later on. Leadership opportunities, I think that, you know, being part of this organization that you're in and others around campus, leadership positions, considering things like the leadership minor that you can get through, that's available. It's another minor, but it's you know, 15 units. I think it's pretty easy to do. There's a leadership certificate through Student Life, and that's completely free. It's intended to span about 18 months of your college career. So, you know, if you're a sophomore or junior now, it's perfect. You got lots of time. They have a number of activities that you participate in, and you opt in, you choose the ones that are of most interest to you, and you get a special certificate that you earn, and that goes on your resume, and that's just another thing to set yourself apart. Back to the student organizations and involvement. There's something like 350 plus student organizations on campus, and yet I've heard from many students who say, gosh, there's no organization for this or for that. And so I've actually been the advisor for brand new organizations that students say, hey, there's a need, I have a need for an organization like this. I have, you know, half a dozen of my buddies and friends want to get involved. Would you help us do it? And there's lots of professors who are willing to be an advisor, but that shows a real step up in leadership, that you see a void, you see something that would make sense for you and others, and to create it. And it's frankly not too hard. Student Life has got it boiled down pretty easy, so it's very doable. Anyways, consider that to, you know, enhance your leadership background. And then the other things, the study abroad, I know it's a requirement for honors students, so that's fantastic. If you get a chance to do one early, maybe you'll have a chance to do a couple. You know, these days of COVID, that's going to be something. I don't know how it's going to go if we have if you're a senior and you haven't had your study abroad and you can't right now, they might have to do some sort of special waiving, I guess. Other different things you could do, doing student research. There's the research symposium every spring, learning a foreign language or enhancing your skills in a foreign language. And of course, networking events that are still going on through career services or probably through your college that you're affiliated with. The final step is to know your audience. And so there's a couple key pointers here, resumes and business cards. I'm not going to show you how to do a resume. The career services can do that, but I do have some pretty key pointers that I think are good to keep in mind. So first of all, in general, a resume should list the most important information at the top and decreasing importance as you go down. And people kind of get like a little offended. It's like, well, everything on my resume is good. I can't, you know, the stuff at the bottom is not less important than the stuff at the top. And well, you know, the reason why is that recruiters or other people just don't have much time. So you want to give them the really, really good stuff at the top. So some of the things a resume should do is it should look good. It should look professional, it should represent you well. And you should always have it up to date and ready for unexpected opportunities, because who knows, maybe you're at a networking event and somebody says, you know, we just got an opening for an intern and I think you might be a good candidate. Could you fire over your resume to me tonight? And if your resume isn't ready to go, it takes you 2 or 3 days to do it, you might have missed an opportunity. So my advice is that you should at least update your resume annually, but my advice is twice a year. We change daylight savings in the spring and we change it again in the fall. So that's a good reminder. They tell you to change your batteries and all your clocks and stuff too. But I think that's a good reminder 2 times a year. If you're touching your resume and you're updating it for the prior semester or the current semester, whatever has changed in that time, especially at this point in your academic career, there's a lot going on. So there's a lot of changes. I think that's good rule of thumb and to continue throughout your careers. So those are some of the things your resume should do. Some of the things your resume should not have is any typos or errors or poor grammar. I mean, it really, you're not there to represent yourself. It's reflecting on you. So you want maybe to ask your roommates or your family to review your resume and make sure you pick up any problems like that. Resumes are not like curriculum vitae. CVs are more utilized outside the United States, and often they include photographs. They say your age and your hobbies and your marital status and all kinds of stuff that's not relevant, in fact, not good at all on American resumes. So we say don't put any of that stuff and just keep it, keep it to the facts. And never, ever, ever have falsehoods, untruths, fibs, or lies. And this is a couple years old now, this incident, but it's very striking and I think it's very relevant. The CEO of Yahoo was fired several years ago after he lied on his resume. And he lied on his resume years prior to when he became CEO. But what happened was he said he had gotten 2 degrees, 2 college degrees, and actually he got 1 and he almost got the second one, but he didn't. He did not graduate with that 2nd degree, but he still had it on his resume. And somebody in HR years later found it and ratted him out and boom, he was gone. He was gone. So, just make sure that everything is completely factual. Now you can make it sound good. That's not lying. That's just making it sound good. That's not untruths. Okay. So here's a couple little basic things about the resumes, which I know you know, but just in case, what's the goal of a resume? To get an interview. The interview is what gets you the job. The resume gets you the interview. How many pages should it be? It should be 1. At this point in your education and your career, 1's going to be appropriate. Maybe. My resume now is 2 because I have the academic side and I have the professional side from the aerospace industry. But that's the only reason I have 2 is because I have 2 major phases of my life that I couldn't encapsulate on 1 page. But mine is really just 2. And the reason why you want it to be the most important stuff at the top with least important as you go down is that this is really kind of shocking, but most recruiters spend on average 6 seconds, not minutes, not hours by stretch, 6 seconds to review a resume. So yours has got to just get their attention. And so they're going to be looking at the top, the very first couple bullets, and that might be all they see. Okay. So the 5 things you need to cover in your resume. You have a header, you have an intro, you talk about your education, your employment, and some miscellaneous stuff, involvement, study abroad, whatever. But the things that your resume should say about you is where you're headed, what you're great at, what you've accomplished, what you're passionate about, what you're about. And these things don't line up. It's not 1 for 1, right? So you have to weave in the things on the right to make sure they fit into the categories on the left. And at this point in your career, typically your education is going to be stronger than your employment. So that's going to be heading, introduction, education, employment. As you start working and getting some really valuable work experience in your education after you've graduated a couple of years, that may flip-flop and the employment might take the next spot, the 3rd spot, and education may drop further down. Those are decisions you make as you're really critically updating your resume twice a year, ideally, or at least once a year. Business cards are always great to have, and what I found is that many students don't have them. They wait until they get a job and their employers give them a business card. But if you have business cards, you should always have them with you. And when you have them, you should present them at the beginning of a meeting, or if they're in a network situation, or somebody asks you to repeat your name, or, you know, how do you spell your name if you have unusual spelling, or ask you to send you something, you know, your business card's going to have your email and your contact info on it. And, you know, the pictures on the right there are showing that you want to make sure that you show the person that you value their business card, and as opposed to just getting it, jamming it in your pocket, and taking it with respect and thanking them for it. So I suggest that students make their own, create their own business cards. You can go to, there's all kinds of business card companies. You can spend $10 and get 500 business cards pretty easy. The Vistaprint is the one that just came to mind. Vistaprint has sales on them all the time. Just go on their website. Anyways, I like the student business card to be two-sided, because you can really get a lot of information with this way. So the front side is your name, your major, you know, interdisciplinary minor, your phone number, your email address, a non-student email address like Andy Beer Boy. Instead, you know, whatever your STSU email is pretty good. It's got your initial and last name and some secret code. So that might be something to just switch to, because it's very conventional. You can actually print your own business cards. You can go to, you know, Office Max or any of those places, and they have business card templates. Be careful with those, because they have them where they're like pre-punched and you print on them and then you punch them out. So the edges are kind of weird. If you use that, just trim them just inside those edges and you can get away with it, because, you know, the business card should be a thicker stock than just, you know, regular paper, typing paper. But the cool thing about my suggestion here is if you flip it over, you can put a lot of stuff on the back of your business card, which for most people, it's just unused real estate. So this example, you know, it's somebody who's going to graduate next year. They've got some language skills. They completed some internships. They studied abroad. They've got some leadership experience. And oh, they did the leadership certificate. That's pretty powerful. I mean, that's like your resume on a 2.5 by 4-inch card, right? I mean, it's pretty effective use of a little piece of paper. Another suggestion I just added, really because we're not doing so much networking where we're giving out business cards so much, is maybe look to modify your signature block. And if you do a good job, it's almost like a mini resume. So I made up this one for Andy Aztec, and it's the same information that was on the business card, the school, the degrees, the leadership, and all that. Next to that is my signature block, and that just gives a summary that, you know, I teach at San Diego State, I'm a faculty fellow, I'm the licensee for TEDx, assistant dean, you know, and my LinkedIn profile location is there. So that's, you know, that doesn't add too much. It's kind of like a freebie resume that's included with every email you ever send. How easy is that? So I've included a couple other ones that are pretty good. If you look at the lower right-hand corner, some of you may know this guy, Jordan Harrison. He was a student leader several years ago when he was on campus, and he continues to be very involved in campus. And his says, enlighten, encourage, empower, uplift somebody. That's pretty succinct. And if you know Jordan, that's what he's all about. That embodies him. And I've got his LinkedIn profile here in a minute. You'll see that even more. So social networks are something that is really part of your personal brand. You need to know that you need to manage them actively. And many employers use social networks to screen applicants. And there's a trend for recruiters to go to beyond LinkedIn. You know, they might go to Insta or Facebook or wherever you are. So, you know, they want to make sure that your professional LinkedIn profile kind of has some semblance of matching to your personal. And so I've heard a scary story, actually, that in an interview, somebody was being interviewed and they said, oh, do you have a LinkedIn account? And the guy says, the interviewee said, oh yeah, I do. They said, well, open it up. Well, we all know how we could protect our LinkedIn or our Facebook and put our blocks on. But if you open it yourself, there are no blocks, right? So this person was just busted because all of his stuff was all out there. Anyway, so social employers are really looking at social networks, and they're using it to screen candidates, and sometimes they're not hiring, up to about a third not hiring because of stuff they found on the internet. So make sure that you know the difference between professional and personal social network sites. On the left are personal networks, and these are great. They're fun to socialize, keep in touch with your friends and family, entertainment, kill time, sharing content. That's fun. You spend time on that. But on the right-hand side, these are your professional networks, and these are things that you're investing time into. So help create and maintain your professional identity. Use it to make contacts, search for opportunities, keep in touch with other people, employers, or hopefully potential employers. Keep those up to date for your career changes and whatnot. And so the personal networks, just clean them up. You want to make sure there's no discussion of partying or racially motivated, gender, sexual, bad posts, negative comments about an employer, or boredom at work. If I'm about to hire you and I see that you vent and you talk about your current employer, I don't want you talking about me like that. So clean it up, and going forward, just make sure every post will not create a negative reaction. And yeah, put out your privacy settings. Just be careful if you're during an interview, they ask you to log in. Now your professional network is where you should really be focusing a lot of your time. And there's lots of professional networks out there. One of my honors assignments was for people to pick the network that most suited their career path. And most ended up going to LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is really, really good. It's well accepted across many, many industries. And it's more in depth than what you would have on your resume. So make sure you have a summary that you really focus on. Make sure you include key skills and keywords. It doesn't have to be as terse or as brief as your resume has to be. Aim for a complete profile, so you cover your education, your expertise, areas of interest, photo, and maybe if you get somebody to add a recommendation, that might kind of set you apart from the crowd. And I encourage students who have been in my class to connect with me on LinkedIn while they're in the class or after, it doesn't matter, because as they go through life and they get new jobs and they have life events, I get a post from LinkedIn, and I'll just send them a quick email, say, hey, congratulations on this, or good to see you doing so well, or whatever. So join relevant groups that you might have an interest in, and kind of see what's going on in those circles as well. So as I mentioned, this is an example of a LinkedIn profile that is just top notch. This is my buddy Jordan Harrison. He was in my two of my classes when he was an undergrad, and he went on to get a full paid scholarship at Harvard. He's back in San Diego, and he's doing amazing things. So he has all the things. He has a good profile. He has a good experience, outstanding experience in education. His recommendations to and from others. He's really done a good job. He's put good time into it, and it pays dividends. The final thing to discuss is what I call what we call the elevator pitch. And you've heard of it. I just wanted to kind of give a quick overview, because that's a key aspect of personal branding. And the elevator pitch is really a short sales pitch or a summary to quickly and simply define a value proposition. And the value proposition is you and what you can offer, right? So the term comes from a scenario where an accidental meeting with somebody important in an elevator. And in this case, it's just you and that person. And so it should be very delivered, very brief, 30 seconds to 120 seconds. So that's a minute or 2 minutes. But less is more. If you could get it into 30 seconds or so, maybe even a little less than that, to just get out your key points, it's very, very valuable. But if you can do a good job in those few seconds, if they're interesting and they add value, it may cause a continued conversation when you get off the elevator. It may lead to an exchange of business cards. So good thing you got your business card. It actually might even lead to scheduling a meeting, or possibly maybe even an interview, right? So the elevator pitch is something that it's very personal. You need to develop what you're about and practice it, but don't make it sound too rigid or robotic. Make it sound natural, and make sure it represents you well. And don't hesitate to tweak it and modify it as things change from your perspective, or from your goals, or from whatever you're sharing in that really important pitch. So that's my input. 3 easy steps for personal branding. Make that first impression. Make a great first impression. Do things to set yourself apart. You're doing so already. Just keep it up and keep adding to that. and know your audience and make sure you put your best foot forward from that standpoint. So with that, two things. We can have questions right now. We'll open it up to questions, but what I can do is if you have an interest, send me an email and I'll send you the slides from this presentation. It's cprobett@sdsu.edu. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out of this and get back into seeing each other, and we can talk and do questions and whatnot. Okay, so there we go. Any questions? I need to have a sip. Actually, a couple, not this year, but earlier last year at the Leadership Summit, Morgan was there, and she had just been in my honors class the year prior. So I asked her to go at the end of this presentation, and she and a handful of other people did their elevator pitch, and Jordan Harrison was there. And so
exactly.
Morgan, yeah, so she met him briefly, but Morgan gave hers. She did a good job, and so it's just something. I mean, it's kind of private. You need to take some time and put it together, but share it with your friends and family, and polish it up.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
What would you recommend somebody who has a hard time, I guess, selling themselves, or sort of listing what they've done? Like they maybe feel a little bit uncomfortable in how they do it.
Yeah, I think if you take some time to really kind of take your resume and boil it down to your business card and boil it down to maybe even your elevator pitch, get comfortable with what you've done and who you are. And I know sometimes it feels kind of like you're bragging maybe, or kind of, overly expressing yourself, but it's true. It's what you've done, and it's legitimate. It's, you should be proud of it. And, if you're like saying, okay, should I say this or should I say that? That's where your friends and your family can give you the input of what sounds more professional, what sounds more powerful, what sounds more enticing, whatever criteria, they can give you that advice. And it's a matter of getting comfortable with delivery, and then that should give you the confidence that what you're sharing is really good.
Thank you for that. One other question I have, it might sound a little sillier, but it's actually a problem that I've had since forever. I know that especially in business, it's very common practice to do handshakes, but I've always had very clammy hands. So,
part of that might be because you might be a little nervous to do that as well, but maybe have a pocket, or maybe just a tissue that you have in your hand, and you kind of have it in your shaking hand, your right hand, and palm it off in your left hand kind of at the last minute, so it's as dry as possible. And
yeah.
I think, again, it comes down, maybe you put some powder too, a little powder to help. I think it comes down to just being comfortable approaching somebody and shaking hands. And, after you've done it, you'll start not feeling so awkward or uncomfortable.
Yeah. I guess I was asking because I don't really encounter a lot of people who are comfortable sharing that. So then I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do in this situation,
Yeah, and especially, I mean, you don't have to like be the first one out there with your hand, but if somebody extends their hand to you, they are hoping and expecting you to shake their hand as well. So you need to be prepared for that, even if you kind of wouldn't be the first one out there,
Yeah, I've definitely rejected handshakes, and it's kind of taken people aback. And then it's like, how do you explain that in the moment, right?
Well, I mean, we got the big out right now with COVID, right? Nobody's shaking hands. So, I have friends who come up to me and I'll just do the air hug. I mean, I know that they've been, isolating and they're wearing masks and all this stuff, but I can't handle getting people in my family sick. So I just, so I think we're going to have a whole new protocol, and shaking hands may literally go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other questions? Okay, so as you may be still thinking of questions, if after we're finished with this, if you come up with a question, send me an email, or you can send me an email and just get a copy of the presentation. But I know sometimes after you think about it a while, you go, oh, I should have asked this or whatever. So feel free to just reach out and I'll answer questions. Let me just check. Is there anything on chat? One. I need to
Yeah, I
step
think
out.
Emma said she had to leave.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. And this is recorded, so what I'll do is I'll share it. I get a link, and so I'll just share that with Morgan, and then she could just send it out to all of you guys as well. In fact,
Perfect.
how about this? How about I give you the link and I give you my PowerPoint? Boom.
Amazing. Two birds with one stone.
Yeah, yeah. Then people don't have to go back and forth. But if after you get it and you think about it, if you have additional questions, just reach out and send me an email, and I'll get back at you.
Perfect.
Can you talk a little bit about what's been your best experience with somebody with first impressions?
My best experience with first impression?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess I'll generalize it that I've really been impressed by people who have a lot of energy and who, you know, they're not necessarily coming to shake your hand. They just kind of come into a room and they just seem so upbeat and open. And I think that for me is a really good first impression. It makes me feel comfortable, makes me feel like I want to go talk to that person or whatever. I think humor is also a nice feature. I feel comfortable if somebody's kind of not, you know, telling jokes per se, but kind of just keeping it light. And I think that puts a lot of people at ease. And in fact, I just started to get to know somebody on the alumni side who's just hilarious. He's just a funny guy. And he instantly just made me feel comfortable and made me feel welcome in this situation, which I didn't know much about. And he valued my input. He asked questions that were meaningful. And that was not really a first impression, but it really has left me feeling really good about how he opens up and starts meetings and encounters people he doesn't know. I thought it was pretty cool.
And were there any mistakes that you ever made with personal impression, like first impressions, that you regret?
Oh yeah, big time. The one that most comes to mind, Morgan might have heard this, I might have said this in her honors class. When I was in the aerospace industry, we had a lot of conferences with airlines. We sold our products to airlines. We sold our products to Airbus and Boeing, and then directly to airlines. So this was a operators conference. And so the head of marketing was taking me around. I was the president. He was taking me around and introducing me to the heads of all these different companies. And I was introduced to a guy, and I put my hand out to shake his hand. And he was from Saudi Arabia. He says, "I'm sorry, I cannot touch a woman inappropriately."
Oh yeah, I remember this.
And I just felt like such an idiot. And I'm just like so pissed at the guy who's taking me around. He didn't give me a heads up. As I wouldn't have done it, but you know, that I was shaking everybody's hands. I'm giving out business cards, probably 100 of them. I just felt so stupid. And I mean, it was innocent. And he was not rude. He just said it was inappropriate. And I thought, oh my goodness. So yeah, that one always comes to mind when I think of something really dumb.
Like a cultural difference.
Totally, yeah. And in the aerospace industry, women are few and far between anyway, so it was probably not something he encountered much either. So we both learned something from that, I think.
Yeah, I think, well, I'm actually in international business, so we're taking a class that's exactly that, and it's like, I think it's an expression called breaking protocol or something,
Yeah.
where you actually visit another country and then it's just a mistake like that.
Yeah, that's generally if you're gonna travel to outside the United States, doing some, you know, like cultural homework, seeing what's appropriate, what's not is pretty good rule of thumb. This was a very international conference, so I probably couldn't have anticipated that too much. The other thing that's very important is the business card thing. This is my phone, but imagine it's a business card. When you're dealing with people from Asia, you present your business card like this, and you kind of almost bow down and you hold it with both hands, and they accept it with both hands and they kind of bow down. And like I kind of mentioned, Americans tend to just take it and stick it in their pocket. And that's very insulting. That's very rude. So you need to really kind of know if you're going to a specific place, what their norms and rules are. And for example, if you go to France, you know, if meetings in France, they start at 9 o'clock. Well, we have coffee and pleasantries and bonjours and pastries for the first half hour. But if you have a meeting in Germany, chop, 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 it starts at 9 and you're going to get at it. So you need to flex your, you know, know your flexibility of cultural appropriateness if you can.
Yeah.
So that was an eye opener, and it's nothing like that has happened since. But I think that, you know, you can do it, especially if you're studying abroad. You definitely want to do some homework on the places you're going.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Any other questions?
None from me. Just thank you so much, though. I really appreciated the presentation.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, Morgan, I'll probably get the recording in the next hour or so. So I'll just give you the point, the PowerPoint, and just reach out if you guys need anything along the way.
Thank you so much, Christine, for this. I know it was so impactful on me as a freshman. I literally have never forgotten about it. So thank you so much for sharing with everyone.
Yeah, this is your third time through it now, so you've got it
right.
Okay, everyone, have a good evening. Good luck this crazy semester, and reach out if you need anything.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. And I'm going to log off, so all you guys are going to be lost, so bye.